Ever wonder who could make the police turn a blind eye just by standing on a street corner? Who could command the respect of the notoriously ruthless Italian Mafia, not with brute force, but with sheer intellect and charisma? And who, despite being a crime lord, was hailed as a hero by his own community? This is the story of Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson, the man who ruled Harlem with an iron fist and a giving hand. Stay with me as we uncover the life of the real Godfather of Harlem. The 1930s. America was in the grip of the Great Depression, and nowhere was the struggle more palpable than in Harlem, New York. For the African American community, it was a time of immense hardship, a double-edged sword of economic despair and systemic racism. Jobs were scarce, opportunities were non-existent, and hope was a luxury few could afford. The vibrant cultural explosion of the Harlem Renaissance had faded, leaving behind a neighborhood grappling with poverty and crime. It was in this crucible of desperation and resilience that legends were forged. And one name would soon rise above all others, a name whispered in back alleys and spoken with reverence in community churches: Bumpy Johnson. Born in South Carolina, Bumpy arrived in Harlem as a young man, sharp, ambitious, and with a keen understanding of the streets. He saw a world of illegal lotteries, known as the numbers game, thriving in the shadows. This wasn't just gambling. For many in Harlem, it was a source of income, a community-run enterprise that offered a glimmer of hope where the legitimate economy offered none. But this local ecosystem was under threat. Downtown mobsters, like the infamous Dutch Schultz, saw Harlem's numbers racket not as a community lifeline, but as a cash cow ripe for the taking. They wanted to muscle in, take over, and bleed the community dry. This is where Bumpy Johnson made his stand. He wasn't just another tough guy. He was a strategic thinker, a chess player in a world documentos on checkers. He rose through the ranks, working for the reigning queen of the numbers game, Stephanie St. Clair. When Schultz launched his violent takeover, many folded. But not Bumpy. He became St. Clair's chief enforcer, her frontline general in a brutal street war against the Schultz mob. He understood that this wasn't just about territory. It was about sovereignty. It was about protecting Harlem from outside exploitation. The streets of Harlem became a battlefield, and Bumpy Johnson was its most brilliant and fearless commander. He outsmarted, outmaneuvered, and outfought Schultz's forces, earning a reputation for being both intelligent and utterly ruthless when necessary. Imagine the scene, a lone figure silhouetted against the dim glow of a Harlem street lamp. He stands perfectly still, his sharp suit immaculate, his fedora tilted just so. He doesn't need to shout or brandish a weapon. His very presence is a statement. This was Bumpy Johnson. His power wasn't just in the men he commanded or the fear he could inspire. It was in his quiet confidence, his unshakable control. Police officers who would normally shake down anyone accessorios suspicious would see Bumpy, nod respectfully, and walk on by. They knew he was the law in this part of the city. He maintained order, his own kind of order, and in many ways, it was more effective than theirs. He was the silent king, the unofficial mayor of Harlem. His gaze could stop a fight, his word could settle a dispute, and his judgment was final. This image of Bumpy, the stoic and solitary figure watching over his domain, became legendary. It symbolized a new kind of power, born from the streets for the streets. But here's where the story of Bumpy Johnson gets complicated, where the lines between gangster and benefactor blur. To the outside world, he was a criminal, a racketeer. But to the people of Harlem, he was Robin Hood. He was the man you went to when your child was sick and you couldn't afford a doctor. He was the one who handed out turkeys on Thanksgiving and toys on Christmas. When a family was facing eviction, it was often Bumpy who would quietly pay their rent. He understood the struggles of his community because he was a product of it. The profits from his illegal enterprises were often funneled back into the neighborhood. He sponsored youth sports teams, funded scholarships for bright kids who had no other way to get to college, and provided a safety net for the poor and elderly. He wasn't just giving handouts, he was investing in his people. He saw the systemic neglect and stepped into the void. While the city authorities often ignored Harlem's plight, Bumpy provided. Was it a way to buy loyalty? Absolutely, but it was also genuine. He had a deep-seated love for Harlem and its people. He protected them not just from rival mobs, but from the indignities of poverty and racism. He ensured that local businesses were supported, and that the money generated in Harlem stayed in Harlem. In the eyes of his community, he wasn't a crime lord. He was a provider, a protector, a patriarch. He was their Bumpy. Now, let's talk about respect. In the world of organized crime in the mid-20th century, the Italian-American Mafia, the Cosa Nostra, was the undisputed superpower. They were a closed, formidable, and deeply prejudiced organization. For an outsider, let alone an African-American man, to gain their respect was almost unheard of. Yet Bumpy Johnson did more than gain their respect. He became their peer. After the war with Dutch Schultz, a new power emerged, the Genovese crime family, led by the infamous Lucky Luciano. They too wanted a piece of the Harlem pie. But instead of another bloody war, Bumpy negotiated. He met with Luciano and the other heads of the five families. They saw in Bumpy not just a street brawler, but a man of immense intellect, a shrewd businessman and a leader who had the unyielding loyalty of his people. They couldn't just crush him. He was too smart, too entrenched. So they made a deal. Bumpy would retain a level of autonomy over Harlem's rackets, paying a tribute to the Italians but effectively running his own operation. This was unprecedented. He attended meetings with the Mafia's top bosses, not as a subordinate, but as an equal. They consulted him, they valued his opinion, and they feared his mind. He would often mediate disputes for them, his reputation as a fair and wise arbiter beyond the borders of Harlem. He played chess while they played cards, and they respected him for it. This relationship, built on a foundation of mutual respect and strategic alliance, would last for decades, cementing Bumpy's status as a true powerhouse in the American underworld. Bumpy Johnson's life was a paradox. He was a poet and a philosopher who could quote Shakespeare, and a gangster who could order a hit without blinking. He was a convicted felon who spent significant time in prison, including a long stretch Alcatraz, and a beloved community leader who received a hero's funeral, with thousands of Harlem residents lining the streets to pay their respects. His story challenges our simple definitions of good and evil. He operated outside the law, yet he provided a form of justice and support that the law failed to deliver. He was a product of a system that denied him legitimate paths to success, so he carved out his own empire in the shadows. So this brings us to the ultimate question. Looking back at the life of Bumpy Johnson, was he a vicious gangster who profited from crime? Or was he a revolutionary community leader who used the tools at his disposal to empower and protect his people in a deeply unjust world? Perhaps the truth is that he was both. A complex man forged in a complex time. A man who became a legend, not just for the empire he built, but for the community he never forgot. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the lives of history's most compelling figures. We'll see you in the next one.